Hello, Daly. Say hello to everybody.
Hello.
How you doing, buddy? A good place to sort of start is sort of talk about how I know Daly. I think we've known each other since what was it, year 7 in high school, something like that.
Yeah.
Go that way, mate. And to give you some background on Daly, Daly's always right because I told him Marvel was better than DC, and that was wrong. Yeah, so Daly, I was about to say your latest hobby is Dungeons and Dragons, but you've been doing it for quite some time now. Is that right?
A couple of years. I think it's nearly 2 years now. Started off playing it and then got into the miniature side of things.
Where did you start playing it? Was there a club or something or what?
Well, I've always wanted to play it, but this is England, you know. Dungeons and Dragons is primarily an American thing. It's by
really?
chance, really. I was getting a tattoo one day, and the girl who was doing the tattoo said, "I'm going to play Dungeons and Dragons." I was like, "Oh, I want to play," and she welcomed me and Sophie to go. Sophie DMs, which is the making up the story side of it.
All right.
I just went from there.
Sophie does it as well. What for your games that you play?
Yeah, she's primarily the dungeon master, which is the storyteller. And we're the players who have to do what she tells us, really, at the end of the day.
So I know Dungeons and Dragons is like a big thing, isn't it? There's a lot to go through. We couldn't possibly cover all of it in the time that we have. But for anyone who has never played Dungeons and Dragons or knows very little about it, how would you summarise what it is and what they're about to see tonight? There's a loaded question for you, mate.
If you like, I guess if you like stories in general, because it's about making stories with your characters. You don't know how it's going to go. Sophie does, because obviously she's the DM, but it's primarily about the story and how your characters interact with the world that she's created. That's how I.
So I purposely didn't look up anything online because I wanted to be surprised and sort of talk it through with you today. So when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, is it like you roll dice to make decisions on what the outcome is? Is that right?
Primarily dice, yeah. So Sophie will give you a situation, and it can be in combat or out of combat, and she'll get you to roll a dice for perception, stealth, all sorts of things. There's so many elements to it. But it all goes on. So it's on chance as well. So it's not your decisions per se. It's more on what the dice say, basically.
Okay. Is it like a game you can lose, or is it just a story you tell throughout the day, or?
The only way I know that you can lose it is if all of your party die. If every single one of you die in the game, that's game over. If your character dies, but the rest of the party lives, you can just create another character and join in with that character.
Oh, okay. Then that's how they go on for like weeks and months and everything else like that. Then
years, yeah, go on for years, mate.
Yeah, go on for ages. So, but you're primarily more about the painting of the figures and the creation of the figures. Is that right? More than you play the game.
I started with the game playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then I bought a figure and I was like, I'll try and paint it. And I didn't have the right paint. I didn't have the right brushes. I didn't have anything.
Right.
But my first one I ever painted I was proud of it. And then it just sparked an interest, and then I just I started looking at monsters that I liked, and then I bought one. I thought, I need to buy better paints. I need to get, and in the end, it just turned into a hobby. I've got loads. I've got loads upstairs that I still need to paint. Box of shame.
We'll start by going through some of the figures, and this is the first one I've got. Tell me about this guy.
That's my character. I play mainly is the barbarian. His name's Bear Bloodsword.
Okay.
Hence the bloody sword.
The bloody sword.
He's a half orc. He was the first character I ever created, and that's the second figure I've done with him. I did an original with him, which I don't like the paint job of, so I redid him with a beard. So obviously I grew a beard in lockdown, so I did the same for him. He's my OG. He's my original character, who's my favourite.
So he's not the first one you've done because you've sort of redone him. You say.
There was another figure of him. He's holding his sword up, but it doesn't look anything like that.
Right. Okay. So this is what I'm curious about. So you've obviously created this character, But you go out and there's like characters on in the shop or things you can buy online, and you go, that's kind of what I'm going for. Bring it home and then you add to it and paint to it, or is there? How do you start?
That character there was from a website called Hero Forge.
Right.
And he's a custom-made miniature, which I made from scratch.
Okay.
So you design it on the website, exactly how you want it. I mean, even that to the pose of him holding the sword like that.
Right.
And then you order it. It's quite expensive on there, but you can buy the files, and if you've got your own 3D printer or know someone with one, you can just give them the file and they can print it for you.
Okay. I didn't realise it was like that. So this is a
Not
unique piece.
Not all of them. Just that one there.
Right. So is that like a unique piece then? Is it you like to get to choose all the body parts to make him up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that figure you're looking at there, you can't buy that in the shop. That's my figure I've made. That's one I've created on the website. Most people, because that figure there is quite expensive to have a custom-made one, but you can buy pre-made ones and paint them and have them as your figure.
Right.
You know what I mean? So... But I wanted my own unique figure, so I had him made for me.
Okay.
But if you can't afford, you can buy cheaper ones, a lot cheaper, and just paint them and have them as your figure.
Let's look at character number 2. Who's this guy?
That's Serpsio, that one.
What does he do? Is he like another one of your party, or is this a...
So he was a character I was going to use in a campaign, which I never used in the end.
You say campaigns, what do you mean by that?
So, at the moment, we're playing 3 different campaigns, which is 3 different stories. Which they can be connected or they can be completely separate. Some of them are called one-shots, so you can do a one-shot story, which you can do in one evening. Or the big campaigns that we do, they last a long... But you can sometimes, it's up to the DM, you can carry characters over to different campaigns as well.
Okay.
But some campaigns you have to use a completely different character because it's like a different world.
You could pick him up at any time and sort of build out a story for him, maybe change him to a main character and stuff like that. That's cool. So
he's ready to go. So if Sophie was to make another campaign, I don't know, we'll say we start next week, and she goes, right, new characters, new world, I could use him. And he could be, rather than a barbarian, he could be a fighter or a monk or, you know.
And sort of flesh out the story from there. Well, you've got a lot of love for this character in here. What was his name again?
So he's another one that was made on Hero Forge, so he's a custom-made one again.
Okay. The one thing about these images that I've got, I can't really sort of demonstrate how big they are. I don't suppose you've got one nearby to sort of show how small they actually are, do you? Don't worry if you haven't. I should have asked you that before you came on. No.
I haven't. But I can get Sophie to get one if you don't.
Yeah, just if that's all right. Just because I don't think these images are obviously we've zoomed in. I don't think people quite realise how delicate you need to be with the brush to sort of paint them as well as you do.
I think she's in the patch. She's Lady Ice, I think.
Okay, cool. Well, while we're waiting for that, we'll go on to number 2. I love these. I think these are some of my favourite ones where they're immediately something's like, wow, what's that come from? And the detail you've got in the teeth and the tongue and stuff like that are incredible. So tell me about these.
They're monsters called mimics.
Okay.
And basically they can pose as a barrel. They can pose as anything, actually. A table, a barrel, a door, anything like that.
Okay.
They're cool monsters. They're one of my favourite monsters in the game because you don't know when they're going to attack you.
Yeah.
You know, you see a chest, you think, oh, gold, and you run to the chest and one of those things appear. And Sophie likes to surprise us with those. Doors are the biggest pain we have.
Doors? What, turning into mimics from doors?
Yeah, you encounter a lot of doors in D&D. There's a lot of rooms, but sometimes if you don't check what the door is or check that the door is locked or open, you know, you might be surprised it could be a mimic.
Awesome. Well, Lady Ice says it can be super easy. It's mostly about telling a great story with a group of friends and make believable characters.
There you go. Sums way better than I did.
Sums that up pretty well. So yeah, good stuff. Varga says, can you smash fragile items in normal chests if you choose to kick it? So you're gonna have to. Daly's gonna have to check with the dungeon master on that one.
Can you? Yeah. Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Dungeon Master says it's okay, then it's okay. This is a good example to sort of go and talk about a bit about the paints you use and how do you get that effect. So, how did you go about painting the teeth and the tongue, especially?
So, I mean, I still class myself as amateur.
These look pretty damn good to me, mate.
Well, YouTube tutorials are a great thing. So I watched one about teeth.
Right.
And so the teeth has about 4 layers of paint.
Okay.
You can't do 4 layers, but there's 4 layers. So there's a dark brown, a light brown, and then there's like a bone colour, and then there's a wash on top.
And like the tongue, so you've got like 2 layers there. How do you? Is there a type of paint that makes it not? Because when I tell you why I'm asking these questions. When I go and paint anything, I paint it once, and I know you know you got. I'm going to make you cringe here because I know you were a painter and decorator back in the day. Well, I know you still do it now. Yeah, you still do it now. Whereas when I paint stuff, I paint things one colour, and I'll try and get that effect like you have on the tongue there, where there's like 2 different shades, and I end up with all of like blue and lost all my previous coat on the before. So what do you do to make it sink into it?
So it's about the hardest thing about painting these things is picking the colours.
Right.
So that the tongue on the big tongue. So I painted the tongue purple.
Right.
And then you do something called dry brushing. Have you ever heard of dry brushing?
No. Imagine I know nothing. That's the best way to go about this.
So you get paint on your brush.
Yeah.
And you brush it nearly all completely out on a bit of tissue paper or cardboard, completely out, so you look like there's no paint left on the brush at all.
Right.
And then you just, like I say, dry brush over the tongue or whatever you're painting, and it gives like a very light effect over the underlayer of the paint.
Oh, okay.
So the purple's still there, but the light greens and the, you know, like the pussy bits, because of the dry brush, and it picks up all the raised areas.
Right, I get you. So it kind of like sinks into the crevices rather than kind of replaces the paint that's already there.
So everything that's raised, that hits, but with very little paint, so it skims the top, but it gives an impression of, I don't know, so where the warts are on the tongue, you see, it just highlights them,
yeah,
picks them up.
When you posted these on Instagram, I was like, what? You didn't buy them? You actually painted them yourselves? That's better than some of the stuff you buy in the shops, in my opinion. I bought figures. I know a few things about figures, as you can see at the background here, and I bought some of those. And there's some of those for the money I bought. I'm sure you put loads of money into this. Don't get me wrong, but I bought them off the shelf, and they have nowhere near the detail that you've got here.
I've got a miniature here if you want to see the size.
Oh yeah, there we go. So that's how small they are. And I guess that, so the mimic, you've actually got your fingers on here as well, so that can also show them. But they are absolutely tiny, so the level of detail is incredible. Is the mimic like sort of half the size of your main character, or is it?
So that's my main character. So he's probably about half size, I'd say.
It's crazy the amount of detail you get in such a small amount of area.
The thing I was really happy with, I mean, everyone likes the tongue and the teeth, but I actually like the eyes, because I've actually given them like a little bit of a white dot for eye shine.
Oh, is that? Do you know what? I thought that was the shine from the actual camera. I didn't think that you'd painted those on. I thought that was just the light. So, because there's some gloss on there as well, isn't there?
It's a little tiny dot, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. On to your next figure then. Again, amazing detail considering I would probably paint this and it would just be a solid brown. Who's this guy?
That's an owlbear, that is.
An owlbear?
Yeah.
See, they've got some awesome stuff in Dungeons and Dragons, haven't they? Cider Snyder new.
It's an owl.
Cider Snyder straight in there. Owlbear, nice. He likes that.
I got that free with the first big paint set that I bought.
Okay.
And it's the first big one I owned as well. I mean, that one's probably about that big.
Right.
Compared to, you know, like the character sizes. So that one was quite daunting because I never, you know, I was new to it and I was like, I don't know if I could do one this big. But he was one of the first big ones I did that I was really happy with, actually.
So have you repainted him then, or was he always, you painted him once and was happy?
I painted him once and I was happy.
That's incredible, man. If that's the first crack you had at a big monster, that's awesome. That's
my first go at a big monster, and that's the original paint job I did on it.
Awesome. Vargas agrees. He says that's crazy how insanely detailed it is for a first attempt. Mistress Puff says I love a good dry brush. Fabulous again says that's gorgeous. So yeah, for a first attempt, man, I'd never get anything like that. This is one of my favourites. I love this because it reminds me of Cacodemon from Doom.
I like a Cacodemon. They float around and they chase you around. They fire beams at their eyes. They're scary. I just like them as a monster. I don't like fighting them. But they're one of my favourite monsters, especially to paint because they're all different. The eye on that one, I must have spent probably 2 hours on the eye.
I can imagine it's like because you got hopefully everyone could see it from where you are if you're watching on a mobile. Watch on a bigger screen so you can see the detail. But you've got the blending of the iris in there. So talk me through when you first got this figure. Is it like completely grey, or is there like an outline of where the eye goes so you know where to sort of trace, or was it blank and you had a blank canvas?
So one you buy, that's a WizKids one, which is a D&D make miniature.
Right.
They mostly come primed grey, but sometimes you have to prime them yourself. The eye on that one, actually, you're supposed to put a bit of plastic over it to make it look like an actual eye, but I left it off and just glossed the eye.
Okay.
There was a slight indent where to do the eye, but that's all kind of made up.
So what? There was an indent beforehand, so you kind of knew where to paint, but
where the iris is and the pupil is, you can kind of see where that is on the miniature.
Right, gotcha.
But it's so because they're mass produced, they're not all, they're not all great, and that one wasn't. So I kind of made a lot of that up.
Mr. Puff says that paint job is amazing. The teeth have such a good look to them. You've got the stain and the shadow spot on, and the little red lines on the eye are perfect. So there you go, mate. Some praise, like I said, is well deserved.
So that one there, for example, is usually brownish, a brownishy sort of colour.
Okay. I haven't seen the original, but I love the green. I think that's great.
Well, you'll probably notice this. I based him on Cell from Dragon Ball.
Yes, I can see it now. Yeah, because of the purple with the green. Awesome. So
his shell, his shell was like, remind me of Cell Power, and then I just ended up doing him green and then the purple.
Yeah, and the design you've got on the shell is very much like that kind of black speckled thing that Cell's got as well. So what's this guy's name?
That's an Umber Hulk.
Umber Hulk. Zyder Snyder's in the chat, already jumped in there. Are there like boss monsters then? And things like that?
Can be. I mean, that monster there can be massive. It can be like a Kraken, like the giant Kraken.
That's what they're saying in the chat here, is Kraken but with a question mark, so I think they're not too sure the same as where you are.
Kind of, but it hoards treasure, like the treasure on its back. It is kind of like a Kraken, or you could fight smaller ones. It depends on who's running the game.
Right.
So you could fight 10 of them, but they could be smaller, or you could fight one massive one. It's so different. It's so diverse. Well,
this is the thing. I think the reason I'm asking you these questions is because I tried to get into Warhammer once. I've got some books somewhere. I'll dig them out maybe later. But I tried to get into Warhammer, and like every figure has lore to it. It has ways it moves and how it affects the game. And there's like you could literally buy a novel about one figure and how it works in the game and how it impacts the game. So there's loads of rules to play. But what I'm sensing from Dungeons and Dragons is that there's not really, although there are rule sets to follow to make the game work, really you can sort of do what you want with it within a certain...
To a certain degree, you have to follow the rules for the game to work. But if the DM wants to be more flexible with characters and certain elements in the game, the base game's always going to be the same.
Right.
You have to stick to those rules. Combat is always going to be the same. You have to roll to hit and all that stuff. But you can take a lot more liberties than you can with Warhammer, I think. Although I've never played Warhammer, I think there's a little bit more flexibility.
If you were going to play this, what's the miniature? How many miniatures do you need to have to play it? Is there a limit, or
you can play with 0 miniatures?
Oh, really?
You don't play with any miniatures. Everyone has a character, and that character has a character sheet.
Right.
Has their stat block on them, like in a video game. And some people don't even play with miniatures. They don't have them. But the miniatures, to me, enhance the game.
Right, gotcha. Magic Call Me 27 says Daly is an awesome, hilarious player. Can't wait to get to play again and fight all these awesome monsters. Is that someone you know, Daly?
You don't want to play with me, I'm an awful player.
Well, some of the figures you've got here would actually, like you say, enhance the story somewhat. So just before we move on to the next character, I'm curious about like how you tackled the gold and like all the intricate detail of the treasure on its back. Again, is it like embossed when you got the figure and you kind of had to bring it out with the paints, or how did you approach it?
Yeah, so there's that's embossed and there's slight detail. You have to use your imagination with certain bits because some of it's depending on the figure is really hard to read. Sometimes you can't see what certain things are, so you have to take certain liberties. But like that block of gold on his head, you could see. So I initially painted all the gold, and then I picked out silver, bronze, and all sorts of coins, and then the shield, and then the chest.
That's awesome. Really, really good. And again, you've chosen, I think, the right colours, and the gloss just really sets it off on that one. So
Yeah, originally he was supposed to be blue, and he's green.
I think you made a good choice. I think you had a good choice on eye on that character because again, it'd definitely be one I'd be interested in, and I do think the green works really, really well.
The front, I should give you a better picture of that one because there is a better view of him from the front. You see, he's got a massive gum that sticks out with all these little needly teeth.
I can kind of see it here, but again, you've got a lot of these on your Instagram. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want more detailed pictures, anybody in the chat and see what Daly can do, just chuck him an invite on Daly Thompson 1985, and they're all on there. Who's this?
He's one of my absolute favourite monsters in the whole game. He's called a mind flare.
Right. Okay.
They basically eat brains to live.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know if you know a lot about Lovecraftian stuff like Cthulhu. And
Yeah,
stuff
Cthulhu.
like
I know. It's Sarah played something a game with Cthulhu in it, and we've been talking about it ever since. Is it this where this monster's come from? That.
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, D&D borrows from a lot of things, and a lot of things borrow from D&D. But that's like a Cthulhu-style monster with the octopus face and the brains, and it's an interesting monster. What it can do to people as well. It's quite a gruesome sort of thing. It's not a fun thing to fight either.
Cider Snyder agrees with you. He said this monster's utterly terrifying. So it's maybe someone you've faced before, Cider Snyder. What makes them terrifying is their mind blast ability. Many folk dump intelligence, so they fail. They fail the intelligence save and get stunned. Is that something?
Yep.
Yeah. There we go. So Cider Snyder obviously knows a little bit about D&D there. Dinosaurs as well in D&D.
Yeah, there's everything in D&D.
That's awesome. So tell me about these. Or is this the one figure changed?
I'm a massive Jurassic Park fan, so I saw Velociraptor and I was like, I want to paint a Velociraptor.
Awesome. Again, whereabouts did you paint these? Is like the one? Was it earlier on in your D&D, or was it much later? Because
this was a lot later actually. They were a lot more challenging than I thought they were going to be. Actually, if I'm honest with you.
They look incredible, mate. I mean, you say that you started 2 years ago and you got a lot better. I think the detail, even in some of your earlier ones, are just as good. But I love, again, you've chosen the colour of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You obviously had loads of reference from your time with Jurassic Park. I know you were always a massive Jurassic Park fan back when we were kids.
Loosely, I had a picture of a raptor up, and how they turned out is not how I kind of wanted them to turn out, but they turned out better in a way. I don't know, that sounds odd, I know, but...
No, it looked damn good. So what were the challenges of it? Because I know, because I do Photoshop from some of the stuff I do, and I know working with browns is probably one of my weaknesses.
The challenge with that was how much of the dark brown do I dry brush, because I wanted to make it look kind of stripy as well, and like blotchy.
Right, okay.
But that was a challenge in itself, but how much do I put on it? And in the end, I think I put the right amount on, because I put more on the legs, more on the top of the arms and the back. But it was all kind of guesswork, and in the end, I turned out alright, I think.
Well, Viagra says, I have died once to a mind flayer in Nefank. Am I saying that right, or you're not too sure, Dave? Don't know why. But he did it by...
Sometimes I don't even know how to play D&D.
No, right. Well, he says by brain death he was died by a mind flayer, and then resurrected with an amulet, but died again because he had no brain. So that's...
that sounds like the sort of thing that happened to me in the game, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
That one I'm still not happy with it. I didn't like how the colours turn out. I wanted it to be more of a muted green, and I didn't have one. So I tried muting it down by mixing the brown with the green, and I don't know. I don't think it looks as good as the other Raptor.
No, the other one looks stupendous. I mean, I don't think this one looks bad, and I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself. But especially with the, there's two things I've got a question about this one. I'll start with this, and I'll come back to the other one. Is like the base as well. Is that sand you've put on the base? Or
I haven't painted the sand yet.
No, but so is that sand you've actually? Is that physical sand you've gone and stuck on there? Because I was like, yeah, well, what a great idea, to put the base on. I thought that was awesome.
So it's a simple thing, like Schoolcraft. You get your PVA glue, you dip it in the sand, and you let the sand dry, and then you get a really thin mix of PVA to seal it in.
Right.
And then you can paint it, but you can also buy like little grass and all sorts of little things that you can stick on to make it look like just makes the miniature pop a little bit more with a bit of environment on the base.
Gotcha. So my next question on this one then is, what do you're not happy with it? What's the next step? How do you have to strip it all down before you do it again, or what's the plan?
Chuck it in the bin. No, I've just left it. I've kind of given up on it. It's good enough to put on the table at the end of the day.
Right. Well, I agree. I think it looks awesome. But
the thing is, it looks bad. At the end of the day, when they're on the table, they're so small. Sometimes you can't even see the detail. Right. So it doesn't really matter. So for that one, for example, if we ever come up against Raptors, it's just there for a visual cue on the table.
Right.
Whether I'm happy with it or not, but I won't go back to that one. I'm fine with it as it is.
Does that sometimes happen then, where you get to a point where you're like, I could revisit this, but I don't think it's going to get any better. So it's probably best just knock it on the head or use it, and then move on to the next one.
I thought about buying that pack again and painting another two, because you could always use a pack of Raptors, can't you? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
4 Raptors and repaint it. Whether I do or not, I don't know. Maybe one day. And I'll try it, a different colour scheme. But as that one is, I'll leave it as it is.
Vargris says the super boss of D&D, the door. So obviously ran into a few problem doors as well. And like you say, they can be mimics and things, I guess.
That person knows, Bill. That person knows that doors are the nemesis of D&D. Absolutely, it's tiny.
Yeah, it's really, really tiny. So I had to zoom in as much as I can to try and show it for the show. But again, I love what you've done with the eye. You got I couldn't tell from how small the pictures was. Around the eye, you got that red. Is that supposed to be blood, or is that kind of like rust on the gold part? But
it's blood.
Blood. It looks awesome, and I love the shades of the yellow and the green. From what you've said earlier, you kind of made the colour scheme up, and I think you've chosen some great colours there that make it pop. You say you got this, and like you said, you were going to paint it red, and you made a horrible mess of it. Is there like techniques you use to kind of save it, or do you go, nope, I've committed, I'm going to go down that road?
I've repainted things, so if I painted that eye red and I weren't happy with it, you just simply paint over it again.
Right. So you can salvage them and rescue them after.
You can, yeah.
There's Vargris's fear of the door. The mimic.
That's why you don't trust doors in D&D.
Again, awesome pick of a figure there. So where do you go to sort of find these? Do you go in? Is there a shop nearby that I know? Obviously, lockdown has made things more difficult for you.
No, I get a lot offline. That's from Etsy. Etsy's got a great selection of miniatures on there. You can nearly get any miniature you want.
Right. Okay. And is there like I don't necessarily have to plug anybody, but is there like if I wanted to get started, where kind of places would I go? Because I wouldn't know which is a good D&D place or a bad one.
An online store?
Yeah, just some place to sort of say, look, if I wanted to get into this and give this a go, where would I go?
I go to Amazon, write D&D miniatures, and there's a series called WizKid miniatures.
Okay.
And they're your standard D&D monsters, and they're mass produced, but obviously they're cheaper.
Which is what you need when you first start out, isn't it? You don't want to go buying.
I would say so, and I've painted many of the WizKid ones, and they're great.
Yeah,
they're not as good as these ones, but the Etsy ones have got more of the specialist style.
Yeah.
So I wanted a mimic door, and I couldn't find one on Amazon, so I went to Etsy and There you go.
That someone's done them. Have you created that kind of ooze off the tongue and like raised it off the mould, or was it already there?
So what I did with that, this was just on the top of my head. I did, again, I made it up. I had this thing. I think it's called green flame. Green flame. Anyway, it's like like an luminous green.
Right.
And it's really translucent, and it doesn't usually show up very well. But what I did with that is I got real thick blobs on the brush. I just dabbed it on there, so it looks like it's actually like thick blobs on the paint. Obviously, you have to wait longer for it to dry. But once it was dry, then I just varnished it to make it shine.
Awesome. It's a really good effect. Again, it could sort of something simple to sort of give it more personality. And I used to get the question like, is it worth money investing in this game? And it's like, well, I can imagine if you spend 40 quid on a figure and the paints in that, and you spend, I mean, this is probably a good question for you. How many hours would you spend painting this figure, and how much entertainment was it give you? I mean, this guy here, how long did it take you to finish that completely in paint? Would you guess?
Bloody hell, Bill! I don't want to give it this. It took me a long time to paint this one. He took me a long time because he's a lot bigger. I've got him here. He's a lot bigger than a normal miniature.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah, because you have ones.
And like I said, I struggle with the bigger ones because obviously the detail is bigger, and you can't get away with some of the, what is that there? Oh, I can get away with it. It's tiny. These ones you have to get everything kind of right on them.
Yeah.
I would say I was on it for about 5 hours.
So you see, that's what I mean. I mean, you spend 40 quid and it's cost you 5 hours. You're going to be using it constantly in games. You go to a cinema and watch an hour and a half movie for what, 15 quid, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You translate that into the expenditure and how much entertainment you're going to get from a figure art is. It's not actually that expensive when you think about it. So people are asking in the chat. There's some people who've drawn blanks on who this character is. Do you want to tell us who it is? And
he's going to be one of my characters I'm going to play in the game.
Okay.
He's another barbarian.
Right. Cool.
But I can't remember if he's got an ancestral barbarian. Sophie might shout at me in the chat.
Well, I got Cider Snyder says I'm drawing a blank on this monster. A really buff lizard folk.
He's a lizard folk, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But obviously he looks like a crocodile.
Yeah, and Lady Ice says a lizard folk ancestral barbarian, one of his playable characters. There you go, nice.
There was a character. See, this is the thing. I was playing as a character in another game. I wasn't feeling it with the character. I actually wasn't enjoying playing as that character.
Right. Happens.
The interactions with the other players, and I was just like, I don't actually like this character. So I decided. I spoke to Sophie, and she said, change your character. We can write this other character out, and you can bring another character in. Hence, this character here is going to replace one of the characters I was playing as.
He looks absolutely badass, so I can actually see why you've done that. And
he's one of my favourite paint jobs.
He looks so
cool. I like how I've got the glow on the spikes and the eye and the
scale. I say the gradient that you can, because it's like you could probably paint that quite blandly, but what you've done is you've made him look like he's got a spiky back, not just on the prominent spikes, but out throughout the whole of his back and tail, because you've gradiated it, and the veins in his arms and legs, you've really made those pop.
Well, some of the miniatures I had really a lot of fun painting. This one I had really loads of fun with because I was just experimenting with things, and things turned out really well with it. Like probably can't see it up here, but with the belly, it's a lot lighter than the rest of the thing. But the blending, I've never really blended two colours, together there, where it goes from the light to the dark. I've never really done that before, and that was all experimentation, and I think it turned out okay. Really, really good. Yeah, and like you say, the gradient in from the mouth and how you've gone into the skin. Even your eyes drawn to the character itself, but even when you look at what you've done with the weapon as well, you haven't sort of given up. You can see that the wrapping around the hammer with the feathers at the end. I love how you've again made that gradient. You haven't just got bored or sort of said, "I'll call it a day." The amount of care you put into it is really, really evident. The chat is saying this is a ghoul. Is that correct? Is that a ghoul? Sophie, is that a ghoul? Check in with the dungeon master. Yeah, I look. I buy them because they look cool. That's what you need to do. Bill knows me. If we play a fighting game, I always pick the character that looks cool. They'd be the worst character in the game, but if they look cool, I'm going to play as
That's
them.
all you need. That's you're never going to get me to disagree with that.
So the story with this one is he was supposed to be smaller than that, but the one I ordered was bigger.
Right. Okay.
And as you can see, the figure next to it is the normal size. It was meant to be that size.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe a little bit bigger, but I ordered for some reason bigger. So it's a skeleton Minotaur.
Right.
But Sophie's like, do you know what? I'll put a giant skeleton Minotaur in one of our games one time. I'm like, whew.
Well, yeah, and you know what has turned into an accident has actually turned into pretty cool. Maybe
Quite terrifying
dungeon
looking
boss.
monster, you know, a giant skeleton Minotaur would be quite scary to fight.
Oh yeah, I can see the horns now because I couldn't see them at first. But yeah, you've got the horns in the background. So yeah, again, happy accident, and you've made the most of them. And is that dry brush how you've managed to bring the bones out in the design?
The chains were the biggest challenge on that one.
Right.
Like the chain link around the waist, because that was it's weird because it looks like chains, but what it is a flat base and it's got these little chain indents on it.
Okay.
So what I did with that one is I painted it all black, and then I picked out all the little chains, which took forever.
Right.
And then I dry brushed a lighter gold over the top to highlight it, basically.
Right.
And it was probably one of the better looking chains that I've ever done, if I'm honest.
That looks awesome, man. Really, really good. Who's this guy?
That's another character I'm going to play one day.
Okay, cool.
He's a monk. He's a turtle. Not a turtle, a turtle.
Portal. Okay.
Inspiration from Ninja Turtles.
Right, okay, yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, with the monk staff and everything. But I also made his head more terrapin-like. I had a picture of a terrapin next to me. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try and put these terrapin lines on his head.
Well, yeah, with the lines across from his eyes and stuff. I've got a question from the chat for you, Daly. Which turtle is the best out of the 4 TMNT?
Donatello.
Donatello. Cool. Okay. I'm the only one who ever says Leonardo. So this is another one I've seen on your Instagram, and again, I love the detail you've done with the veins in the eyes, and this looks almost like rock-like in the way that you've done it, whereas the other ones look more slimy.
Yeah, he did turn out more rock-like. It wasn't intentional, but he did turn out more rock-like.
Well, I like that because again, it gives you contrast on it. And you've used, was this the first one you did that kind of slimy tongue with, or was it? Is this? Did you do the other one first and then apply it to this one?
That was the first one I did the slime with. I experimented with the slime with the mimic chest first, but that's the first like gloopy, like it's actual slime on his tongue.
I think this is the last one that I've got, which again, massive piece. I think you held them up a minute ago, didn't you? Just to get an idea of scale. So a lot bigger than the other ones. Fit in your hand just. But my God, look at the detail that you got on here. And I was struggling with the setup I've got to sort of show how this looks. But you've got this on your Instagram again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd go out if you're interested in what you've seen tonight. Go send Daly a follow on Instagram and have a look at this picture on Instagram because it's a lot better. And I've had to zoom in on the picture to try and show the detail because it is a big old image you sent me.
I bought this one straight after I painted the Beholder.
Right. Okay.
Because that's a Beholder dragon.
Yeah, so I decided to said I have no idea what that one is, but Beholder dragon. Guess. You look like you guessed right.
A Beholder dragon, yeah, a dragon and a Beholder. How cool, huh?
Yeah, very cool.
I painted the Beholder and I was like, you know what? I like Beholders. I want to paint another Beholder. And I saw this on Etsy and I was like, Beholder dragon? Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Looks so good. And even like the detail on the rock that it's clinging to and stuff. The image I couldn't quite see, is that a tail that's wrapped around the rock?
Yeah, yeah. The tail wraps around underneath the rock. I don't know if you can see it up there, and then it like comes around to the front. Yeah,
it's a bit small. Again, you've got different maybe camera angles on your Instagram, but yeah, okay, I can see it there. I think it's really cool how like the tentacly Beholder look, where it's got its eyes, has been translated into the tail.
Yeah.
And again, a very unique change. Mixing the red with, is that grey or blue that you've done like the scales in?
That's blue.
Yeah, I love that because most people
It
like.
makes it look otherworldly, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, most people when they paint a dragon, they tend to be one or two shades of stuff. I think the choice to make it that kind of grey blue with the red really sets it off and makes it different. Back to what you said earlier, where you're doing things like this, and people say, well, why do you have to buy the figures? Because you just do it all on pen and paper. When you're looking that figure, you've got that figure on the table, and you're like, right, you're up against this monster. How much more impact does that have on the story you're trying to tell in D&D when you can actually see that figure on the table rather than trying to envision it in your mind?
Yeah, it just makes it a lot more scary looking.
Yeah.
Because you could describe it in your head, but everyone's got this different picture in their head, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you'll have a different picture in your head to what I would have, but if you can see it on the table, you're like, yeah, that's what that looks like.
Yeah, looks good. Say goodbye to my good friend Daly, and then I'll be back to let you know if anything else is happening on the stream. But again, thanks Daly. I appreciate you sharing this with us. Again, let Daly know if you have any questions. So again, thanks for Daly to being on the show and showing us his collection. I really appreciate that, and thanks for you guys for your questions and things and jumping in.